Today, we are diving deep into a perspective you might have seen online that really challenges the way we think about modern marriage. It's an argument that takes the familiar marriage license and reframes it, not as a symbol of love, but as a pretty complex legal and financial deal. So let's get right into what this is all about. So, right off the bat, the most out there claim that these sources make is this: a state issued marriage license is basically a savings bond. Yeah, you heard that right. One that the man buys for the woman. It's a really powerful analogy, and honestly, it's the key to understanding their entire critique of the modern marriage system. So, how in the world do they get to that conclusion? Well, it all starts with changing the definition of what a marriage license actually does. According to this viewpoint, it's not just an agreement between two people, it's a formal contract with a very powerful and usually silent third party. And here's the core of their argument. When you sign that marriage license, you're willingly signing a civil contract where the state isn't just a witness, it's an active partner. The sources argue this legally ties the couple to the state, and in doing so, it makes the state the real authority over the whole marriage. Now, to back this up, they point to actual legal cases. This quote from a case called Van Colton versus Van Colton is what they use as direct proof that the legal system itself sees marriage as this three-party deal. So for them, this isn't just some wild theory, it's written right into legal history. And this contract, it comes with some pretty huge consequences, at least according to these sources. They argue that because the state is the main party, it gets the final say, basically making it the head of the household. It also means the state has a legal interest in any kids, and it gets to control every single term of a divorce, including things like alimony, which they claim a husband can't even sign away in a prenup. Okay, so this is where we get back to that whole savings bond idea. If the marriage license is really a contract with the state, then these speakers frame it as a very specific kind of financial deal, one that gets more valuable over time. The logic goes something like this. That fee you pay for the license, maybe it's 35 bucks or so, well, that's not just for paperwork. In their view, that's the man's initial investment. That's the purchase price for the savings bond that is then held by the woman. And here's how they say this so-called bond actually matures over time. The longer the marriage goes on, the more it's worth. After a few years, a claim can be made on shared assets. Hit about 10 years, and that claim can start extending to bigger things, like retirement plans. And by retirement, it's a solidified claim on pensions and 401ks. So, a divorce, in this view, is simply the woman deciding to cash in her bond. So what's the big takeaway here? The crucial point they're trying to make is that this entire legal and financial setup creates a direct fight over who's really in charge of the family. It really sets up a battle between two totally different ideas of authority. And here it is, laid out side by side. The sources put forward a biblical model where the husband is clearly named the head of the household. But they put that right up against the state contract model where, they argue, the state holds all the real power and can just override the husband's decisions, especially when it comes to divorce or who gets the kids. This whole argument is really rooted in a particular reading of religious law, which they believe is completely incompatible with state law. And you can see the differences most clearly when you look at how a marriage ends. The difference is pretty stark when you put them next to each other. On one side, you've got the state's process. You need court approval, you've got lawyers, legal fees, and a judge decides who gets what. But on the other side is the process they describe from their reading of scripture. It's a direct action from the husband. He writes a bill of divorce, gives it to her, and sends her on her way. The key difference, as they see it, is that the state is completely removed from the equation. Okay, so if the state-issued marriage license is the problem, what's the solution? Well, the sources say you should just bypass the state system altogether and create your own private agreement. And here are the steps they lay out. First, you draft a private contract, no state involvement, that lays out the terms of your union. Second, that contract should very clearly define the roles of husband and wife according to their interpretation of the Bible. And third, this changes the whole agreement. It's still a three-party covenant, but instead of the state being the third party, it's God. In the end, this entire perspective we've been looking at really boils down to this one big choice. It makes you ask, should marriage be a civil contract that's managed by the state, with all the legal and financial baggage that comes with it? Or should it be a private covenant, defined only by the couple and their faith? It's a point of view that definitely challenges the norm and leaves us all thinking about the nature of the promises we make.